close friends. He's been on the show 14 or 15 times now, and he did a two-part with me just a couple of weeks ago that was all about correcting corrections and dealing with mental illness that we've got and how they keep sending mentally ill people without giving them proper treatment or the right things that they need to change the way that things are being done. But Leffert told me about a month or so ago that he had a friend that he had met for a couple months that was an incredible guy that I need to have on the show because his message is so powerful. So Leffert introduced us together, and we talked just a little bit, and I shared getting to know you intentionally so that we could be a little more spontaneous on this show. And so I don't know too much about you other than what I read in a few minutes of conversation. So, Will, I want to ask you this question now. You were in prison. You had a life that was wrong. You found yourself in prison. You spent 13 years and 3 months in prison. What were some of the people that you got close with and bonded with in prison? What were they like? Because one of my largest goals here with Right Thinking is to help people coming out of prison, have people change their mindset about wanting to get to know them. And my goal right now is that after people hear you, they're going to want to treat people that are coming out of prison with a whole different compassion and a whole different kind of love that before they heard you, they were afraid to do. So what were some of the people that you hung out with in prison like? What were some of their redeeming values? What was it like?
Well, Steve, most of the men it was the men in God that really turned my attention to Christ and was willing now to hear his message. I mean, if I needed a minister today, I would look for one in prison, because anyone who take up a Bible in prison, they don't have any ulterior motives. They're not motivated for money or gold or prestige or honor. They just want a sincere relationship with the Lord because they need him. And if I needed a doctor, I'd try to find one in prison. I met some of the most, I'd never been around so many beautiful minds and beautiful souls in my life until I met some of the men that I met in prison. I mean, it's a wonderful blessing. It's unspeakable, the type and quality of men that you meet in prison, because the motivation is totally different from what we meet on the outside. I mean, it's incredible. You said it yourself when I see how emotional you became just talking about the love that you received when you were behind walls. It's genuine. It's not motivated by anything else but a pure genuality.
Oh gosh, I love what you're saying, because one of my greatest joys is that I was led by the Lord to go into prisons like I do. And I had no idea I was going to be doing that, but I just got to tell you, I have connected with so many men and women in prison that when I get out, I feel like I wish I could have shared it with somebody else from the outside to go in with me. I have very few people want to go in with me and experience what I experienced. They just don't understand. But I remember once in a prison up in Richmond, it was Deerfield, not Richmond, in Virginia, Capron, Virginia, Deerfield Correctional. I was teaching a class, and it was a smaller class. It was probably about 27 or 8 men. And I'll never forget that we all got so close because I sat there and I looked out the window through the fences, and I said, I got to tell you men something. I love coming here because y'all are real. Y'all are real. And I'm going to tell you, when you get out, I want to prepare you that as much as you're going to do the right things, I want to prepare you for some disappointment, because a lot of people, they're not going to respond to you the way that they should. They're going to be afraid of you. And so you have to understand something. And I just told a gentleman today that got out of prison 3 weeks ago. He called me up and we were talking, and he was kind of angry because a lot of people are not doing things that they said they do. This man had a person from some government agency come in with a few more people and gave this presentation to 50 inmates saying, when you get out, look us up because we've got government grant money to help you rebuild your life. So this individual called that man. He didn't get a phone call back. He didn't get a phone call back for 2 weeks. And he finally was getting so upset that he talked to the guy and left a message. And he said, I'm going to call the newspaper. And I'm going to let them know about what you did in prison and where you aren't now. In other words, I let these men know that the outside world sometimes is a disappointment. But you know what, Will? We all have to understand how to handle disappointment, rejection, things not going our way, and become the kind of person that has an independence about us without anger. And what I told him, I'm going to start mentoring him. That was our first time we had a conversation, is that I want to help him understand a lot about life. But one part of it is that I said this in prison years ago, about 6-7 years ago, to 35 men. When you get out and you're trying to get a job and you're knocking on a door and nobody wants to open that door and let you in because they're afraid of you, it might take 37 doors before the 38th door opens up and says, there's something about you. I didn't ever want to hire a felon, but there's something about you that's touched my heart. But every one of those first 37 rejections, I said, just pray for the people for what they don't understand and pray that they'll get it one day, and then just bless them and move on. That's what I do.
That's profound wisdom there, Steve. If I had an opportunity to speak to anyone in prison, and I still do, the one thing that I want people to understand is goal setting, the power of a written goal. Your written goal is the only influence you have over your life. And that's so incredible. I read the Bibles for years and never really understood that the Bible was a book about a goals accomplished. God does nothing without revealing it to his servants, his prophets. And each one of those has something they call a scribe that traveled with them. And they was recording what the messages that God was giving each of those men. Now, if God took the time to write down his goals and achieve them, put a plan together to achieve them, then we should too. We gotta stop looking for someone else to give us something. And we gotta know that, hey, I wrote a poem just the other day, and the first line of that poem, it talks about how water is a gift to itself. It has everything in it to be complete. It needs nothing external for water to be complete. Each man and woman that's in prison today is enough themselves, but they just have to turn within and stop looking in the without for what they need. The kingdom of God is in us, not on the outside of us, Steve. We gotta understand that.
Yeah,
you gotta understand that.
The gentleman I talked to today, he had a lot of anger, and he's a hardworking man, and everything. I'll get to know him, and I won't go too far into him. But what I tried to help him with was he wanted grant money, and he was upset that there really isn't any out there that anybody would tell him about, and that all the people that were talking about it keep sending him to someone else. And then finally, it all came back to the first person that somebody sent him to, that sent him to, it's a circular thing, and he was really upset about it. And I said, I'm just going to be truthful with you. None of what, there's so little grant money out there, and there's so much time it takes to apply, and there's so many applying for the same grants. And I told him a lot of stories about, people in prison that have wanted me to tell them about grants. And I said, don't quit your day job, because here's the bottom line. You're better than that. You don't need to be begging for a handout. You can just get focused on what you want out of life, eliminate distractions, listen to to God, and get your purpose figured out, and then give yourself a plan to go about it and do it. And so, as I said that to him, he's got a business, and he wanted some grant money so he could get some new equipment and different stuff. He's a painter and a power washer, and he's really good. I could tell this man is a hard-working man. But I said, let go of your anger, quit depending on other people, and give yourself a plan. And then I asked him, and that's what's so beautiful about what I read as the lead in that you're talking about. I said to him, do you have a written business plan? And he said, I'll tell you what my business plan is. I get up every day and go figure out how to make money. And I said, you're not going to succeed until you settle down. And I said, look, I read that you were upset because you don't have any credit. Your credit's all been shot. And I said, so we can rebuild your credit. You can rebuild your credit. I'll help you. I'll point you in the right direction and teach you things. but I said, you can be incredibly successful, but not the way that you're angry and thinking about things. First of all, forget all this stuff about getting a grant. Secondly, quit fighting it every single day like you are. Just focus on what you want and then lay out a plan and then go get it. And so, you know, when you talked about writing your goals down and what you just said, I learned the power of a written goal and how to write them down. You know, that's just so beautiful. And it's so fundamental. And I love the way you tied it to the word of the Lord and the scribes that traveled around with the people that were the prophets that were hearing the word of the Lord passed on to other people. Tell me some more about how you rebuilt your life.
When I got out, I was fortunate enough to go to a halfway house. And at this halfway house, I want to back up just a minute, Steve. While I was in prison, when I talked to you about introspection in this note here, one of the things that I discovered is that I have an incredible ability to write and write well. So when I became incarcerated, my family kind of like put a period behind my name. They said he's finished. But when I really became sober and started looking to God, I realized that there was a comma there. And now I had to really dig within and learn how to live and survive on what was in me. I became a gifted writer, and I started writing letters for the men that couldn't write there in that prison, and it started to generate wealth. I mean, I was able to live good in prison without having to reach outside or ask anybody for anything. And these are some of the things that when you begin to look at yourself, you know, each of us have gifts and talents that are resting dormant within us. We looking for everybody else to be a Moses to us when you are your own Moses. You have to become what you never had. And that's where most people are missing the mark. The prison is designed to put you in a place so you can really understand you. You are your greatest gift. But if you never take time to really understand and study you, to analyze it, the Bible tells us to examine ourselves. And he's telling you that for a reason, because there are jewels in you. When you came to this earth, you came to deliver a package. And most people live their whole lives. People ask all the time, what's the richest place on earth? Well, of course, the graveyard. Because so many people have been died with the gifts and talents, the solutions to problems, the creation to diseases. I mean, they're being buried with those things. They're never leaving them for humanity. So, you know, your question is, I mean, man, I'm just overwhelmed for finally getting the opportunity to share this.
Will, I love where you're coming from. You've got it. You've got it. It's in you. That's evident. That's obvious. The thing that I want you to talk about for a minute. By the way, I didn't tell people, but you live in South Carolina right now, and that's how you met Leffert. Y'all both were doing Toastmasters together.
Yeah, we're both Toastmasters.
Well, Toastmasters is a beautiful thing. So one thing that I want to summarize for a quick second here is you firmly believe in the power of organized thinking. That's a Napoleon Hill book, and Leffert's getting pretty good far up there in the Napoleon Hill organization. I introduced him to Don Green a couple years ago, and he's just doing amazing things with Napoleon Hill Foundation.
Yes.
But you got into the Napoleon Hill Foundation recently yourself?
Yes. That book came across my life 20 years ago. And I began to, what I did understand, I began to teach it to other men in that prison. And all I taught them was just the goal setting part, because that's the part that really stood out of the whole 17 principles. So once I got out and began to make money, I was able to invest in myself and put myself through school on the online distant learning program through the Napoleon Hill Foundation, trying to become certified as one that are able to teach those principles with authority.
That's beautiful. I want to tell you two things that you don't know about me. Again, everybody that's listening, when I had the opportunity to have Leffert introduce me to Will, I chose to not get too far into knowing anything about Will, because I wanted y'all to see how our friendship started and have it be hopefully an inspiration to y'all. But Will doesn't know much about me at all. Will, two things. My foundation is based on financial literacy, and I can teach anybody how to budget and handle their money.